I have quite a few notes here. I actually was able to get together with a friend of mine who has autism, whom I work with, and he gave me an awful lot of information, and also, as well as giving me the information, verified the information that I had on autism. So we know that it's accurate based on somebody that has the disorder. Alright, I'm trying to shut a few things down here so I can see my windows. It helps if you don't have 50 things open on your screen. Okay, just a sec. Ugh, it's tricky here. Just a minute. Sorry. Please excuse the delay while I fuss with my computer that doesn't want to cooperate. Alright, it's not going to let me do what I wanted to do, so we're just going to continue on. Alright. First of all, autism. The one thing that many autistic people want you to know right off the bat is that when you think autism, it does not necessarily mean Sheldon from Big Bang Theory or the man on Rain Man. That is not necessarily every autism situation. There is no stereotypical autism, although there are patterns that autism can follow. Let's talk about why somebody, because I kind of wanted to gear this towards how autistic people interact in relationships. Let's talk about why somebody might be attracted to someone in a relationship that has autism, a person that has autism in a relationship. Well, first of all, when you meet somebody with autism, you may realize that you found a person that does not categorize you as typically male, female, or a certain way. Autistic people are literal people, but they are the type of people that do not expect you to be a certain way. They just take things at face value. And it is refreshing to be in a relationship with somebody that does that, if you've ever been in one with someone who's very nitpicky and particular in how they want their partner to be. So it's refreshing to meet somebody that just accepts you at face value. Another reason you might want to be in a relationship or find yourself drawn to somebody that has this problem, this autism, is because you want someone that's committed only to you. Somebody with autism, and I'm talking more of the extreme cases here, they only want to be with the person that they're with, because they can only handle one focus at a time. Good morning, husband. My husband just woke up. I will definitely interrupt a broadcast to say good morning to him. Alright. They also are not pushy about the sexual aspect of the relationship. I believe that. I think sex can go either way with an autistic person. Either they're, all for it, go for it, just really full force, or somebody that's very uneasy about it. I think a lot of it does have to do with how their parents reacted about the sexual questions and how they were brought up as to how they perceive it. Like I said, it's not a one-size-fits-all, and just because somebody has a brain that is autistic does not mean that they don't have definite ideas about different topics. So that's a few reasons why you might find yourself drawn to somebody that has autism or is on the autism spectrum. Alright. One thing about autistic people is to know that some of them will actually try to train themselves and teach themselves how to rehearse responses that people expect from them. Because the one thing somebody with autism wants is to fit in and feel like they are part of everybody else and that they blend, or, they're part of a group. They want to fit in. It's not like they're trying to be antisocial. They just don't know how to interact. So they may train themselves to say please and thank you, to shake your hand when they meet you. It's not something they automatically think, oh, this is a new person, I probably should introduce myself, or I probably should shake their hand and say hi. They don't automatically assume this, but they will teach themselves to do that because they want to have relationships with people. Some autistic people are nonverbal. They don't speak at all. And some are super talkative. That's why I said there's no one-size-fits-all. There is no typical autistic person. It affects people in different ways based on different things. People with autism may be hard to understand and comprehend because they tend to be very monotone. A lot of them, I would say most of them, tend to be monotone when they're just having a casual conversation with you. They don't have the inflection in their voice. Like, you hear me talking and I'm like kind of emphasizing certain words, or like my voice just went up. They don't tend to do that. They tend to talk really pretty much like this, and just, pretty monotone and flat. So it may be kind of, I don't know, cumbersome sometimes to listen to an autistic person. There's one man in particular that I ride the bus with to work at times, and he tends to talk very monotone, but he talks nonstop, and he even answers his own questions. And I may mention him a little bit later too. We'll call him Billy. That's not his real name, but just to protect his identity, he just talks and talks monotone. Another thing about autistic people is they don't always understand etiquette. We talked a little bit about that a second ago, about the shaking hands, please, and thank you, excuse me, things that many of us, it comes natural for us to just assume that when you meet somebody, you say hello and you shake their hand, or you give a hug, or wave hi, and people with autism don't always understand this or assume this. I think that's the biggest thing, is they don't make assumptions. So that's just not how their brain works. So they have to teach themselves in certain circumstances, this is how I should behave. People with autism do not understand jokes a lot of times because they perceive the world very literally, and jokes are very figurative. You have to get, quote unquote, the punchline. I know I have trouble understanding jokes at times, and I'll just look at people and say, huh? And they'll be laughing hysterically, and it'll take me forever to figure out what they're talking about. And sometimes they even have to tell me what they're talking about because I just plain don't get it. I'm going to check a comment real quick here. Just seeing if my comments are working, if I'm able to see comments. And I'm not sure. Probably. Okay, let me continue on then. I'm going to try to keep this pretty brief today, so that you get everything I want to say and don't tune me out, because this is really important. It's good stuff to know. Alright. Autistic people are the best people to tell your secrets to, because they will never tell them. They just don't do, or, I'm sorry, flip that around. They are the worst people to tell secrets to, my mistake, because they don't understand there's certain times you say things and you don't say things. Oh, awesome. Hi, Stamy, is that? I'm sorry, my screen's in the way here. Susan. Hi, Susan. And I'm glad I got accurate information. I tried to be as accurate as possible. Okay, so you don't want to tell them things that you don't want people to know, because they don't have a sense of when it's okay to share this and when it's not okay. Autistic people can tend to take a conversation and turn it back around to themselves. So a lot of times autistic people look very narcissistic or self-centered or conceited because they're all about themselves, but it's just the way their brain is geared towards them and what they're doing and what their, perception is of the moment. Autistic people may avoid certain places and activities because of what their brain is telling them. They may be scared to do something new because their brain is just telling them, it's just not going to work out, it's not good, avoid. So they may seem like they're very avoidant, and some of them even get diagnosed with avoidant personality disorder. But they really don't have the disorder. Their brains are geared that way, to avoid certain things. They're very blunt and direct. So if you want to know where you stand or how you look, an autistic person would be the best person to ask, because they will just tell you like it is. They don't pull punches. They don't beat around the bush. They don't have little innuendos or things that are underlying. They just tell you flat out, this is how it is. I think your shirt is ugly. You look cross-eyed. You haven't gotten sleep. I see the dark circles under your eyes. I mean, they will just say things that the neurotypical person would think, oh, well, that would be impolite to say that, or that's out of place. It's not that they don't care. Their brains are just not geared to filter. That's what it is. They lack filter. It's the best way to say that, actually. When somebody just is tactless, whether it's because they're mean or whatever, you just say they lack filter. All right. They can be very clingy at times, or they can be bossy. This gentleman I told you I will call Billy is very clingy and very much will follow you around talking at you the entire time. Whether you're listening or not, whether you respond or not, Billy will keep on going. And the way Billy talks, I will give you an example. He will say, well, I'm not real happy about our president right now. Why? Because he's making some really dumb decisions. And then you'll just go on doing what you're doing. And a few minutes, not even a few minutes, a few seconds later, he'll say, I think that car's an ugly color. Why? Because it should have been painted purple. And I like purple. Purple's my favorite color. Do you like purple? And before I can even answer, he'll be like, well, purple's just the best color. I just love purple. Purple is wonderful. I think everything should be colored purple. Why? Because it's a bright color. It makes me happy. Why? Because, and he'll just go on and on. He always says why. Anytime he utters any sentence, he'll say why and answer himself. And it's like you really can't carry on a whole lot of a conversation with him unless you kind of quickly interject and listen to hear if he even acknowledged you. Most of the time he's just talking, like, at you the whole time. I already talked about the monotone speech, so I don't need to go over that. I forgot to send my moderator my notes, as usual, to send out to people. I will do that afterwards, because I don't want to take the time to do that right at the moment. Anyways, somebody with autism can go blank. Like, they can just totally, their minds just blank out for periods of time. They can zone out when they feel overwhelmed. I don't know if it's a full-on dissociation. My husband has post-traumatic stress, and he full-on dissociates. Like, he has left the building, which is his mind, or which is reality in his mind, and will totally just blank out and lose time. I don't know. I have to do more studying into that. I don't know if autistic people literally dissociate. Maybe Susan can shed some light on that. Susan's here with us in the live show. I'm glad she is, because it's great to get a perception of somebody that's actually living with someone that deals with this. Okay, thanks, Shawnee, for sharing my video. Alright. But autism people, or people that have autism, have a part of themselves that does not mature. Which is another thing that may attract you to them, because they can be funny, they can be playful, and they're very adventurous. They love doing just off-the-cuff, spontaneous things. They're just very enjoyable people when it comes to just lightening up the mood and, you know, letting your hair down and having fun. So that can cause problems because of the fact that they lack the ability to know when that's okay and when it's not. So they may be playful and adventurous at the wrong times. So it would not be uncommon to be at a funeral and having an autistic person making jokes, because they don't understand the, what's the word? There's a word I'm looking for. They don't understand the proper settings, is the way I'll put it. They don't, their brain does not process, okay, we are all being serious now, it's time to be serious. Their brain does what their brain does, and they go with it. They often think in patterns. Some of them love numbers, some of them love words, and can be very, very good at using words. I know people with children who are extremely brilliant that use a lot of words very early on. I have a child that does that. She's not autistic by any means, but she definitely had a fascination with words. But autistic children do it in a different way. They pattern words. They may string certain words together, Or if they like colors, they may line up colors like all red, all blue of their blocks or whatever, rather than play with, for instance, dolls. I read this or saw it on a video. An autistic person, we'll say it's a little girl that has autism, which I think it's more common in boys actually, but if a girl has it, Barbie dolls. Usually a little girl that's neurotypical will sit there and make Barbie talk to Ken, make them go out to dinner, have relationships, argue, whatever. Not autistic children. An autistic little girl will line Barbie up with Ken, and if she has like little cups and saucers, she'll line all the cups up in a row, or all the saucers in a row. It's all about patterns. It's not about relationship, like interaction with somebody with autism. It's about grouping, I guess you could say. People with autism analyze a lot. They're very analytical people. Now, I don't think the analysis filters all the time into interaction, because like I said, they're very blunt. So it's not like they're going to be figuring out what you're thinking or feeling at the moment. It's basically just that they analyze for themselves. It's hard to explain. I'm not fully autistic, or maybe autistic at all, and my brain doesn't work that way. But I know that their perception is based on what is going on in their head and the way that they perceive whatever's happening. Okay, so that gets a little complicated and very complicated to explain. You'd almost have to watch some videos on it or read some books on it to understand the whole analysis end of things. Or maybe Susan can again shed some light. Looks like she's commenting a lot here, and I'm glad. I welcome that for sure. Okay, somebody with autism does not readily figure out grooming, so doing their hair, bathing, hygiene. Many of them don't have very good hygiene unless they have a carer that comes in and shows them how to do it. Since they're pattern people, they can learn to do things, but it doesn't come naturally in their head to think, I'm going to a party, I probably should put on a nice outfit, do my hair, if they're a guy, shave. They don't automatically assume that stuff like a neurotypical person would. So sometimes their hair is unkempt. Sometimes, I don't know, women might not wear undergarments or something. They just don't automatically figure things out like the normal person does. And again, I'm talking extremes for the most part here. We're talking about autistic almost to the point of learning disabled, I guess you could say. So it's not every autistic person does not do their hair when they go out or dress up for a party. I'm not doing a one-size-fits-all thing here, except that the extremes are what I'm discussing for the most part. Alright. Autistic people can be very honest if they're comfortable enough to do so. They will just, like I said, blurt out whatever they want to say, whatever they think. You don't want to ask them something if you don't want them to be totally in your face honest. If they don't like something, they will tell you. They'll be sitting there eating cake and ice cream and say something like, I hate this cake, this isn't the right flavor, I don't like this flavor, I like cherry cake, I want cherry cake, this isn't cherry cake, I don't like it. And they'll just go on and on about how they hate the cherry cake because they're like that. They're just going to tell you what they think. Or, I'm not eating French fries. I don't eat French fries. My mom doesn't feed me French fries, so I'm not having French fries. So don't make me eat French fries because I don't like French fries. That's how they think. And like I said, it can go on and on where they talk at you and tell you exactly what they think and exactly how it is. And they really don't always wait for a response from you of what you think what they said, because it's not that they don't care, they don't know to care. Their brain isn't wired that way. All they know is to talk about what the here and now is happening, and that's how it is. Alright, next. Oh, they can also be too honest sometimes. Like, they can walk up to Aunt Mary and say, Mom wants me to kiss you. I don't like kissing you because I think you're a mean woman. And I'm not going to kiss you because I don't kiss mean people. Exactly, Shawnee. It's the level of autism. That's why I said this is more on the extreme level that I'm talking about. This is not every autistic person does this, because there's literally no one size fits all. You can have a person that has a mild form of it that just has a different type of thinking, but for the most part interacts normally, neurotypically. Or you can have somebody that has all of what I'm talking about. So it just depends. All right. Autistic people can be very sensitive to textures. They may not like something because it's too slimy, or it's too rough, or it has little nubs on it. They are very sensitive to texture. But whereas some people just may not like the texture of something, somebody that is autistic can feel literal pain from it. So if you're combing an autistic person's hair, they may start screaming because it's causing searing pain to them. It's like they wear their nerves on the outside almost. So something that seems like an average, normal, everyday thing to do can cause them a lot of distress. And if you don't understand autism, you may do something to them without realizing it's really causing them agony. It's just the way their neurons fire in their brain. All right. To an autistic person, what's going on in their mind can often seem more real than reality does. They often will live in their mind more than neurotypical people will. There will be a lot of thinking going on, a lot of reasoning going on, but not reasoning that will keep them from doing things. So there's reasoning without inhibitions, I guess you could say, which is why they can be very much risk takers, and dangerous risk takers at that. I have been told by people that have raised children with autism that you have to watch them extra carefully, because they will be the ones playing with fire, and exploring and experimenting and doing things because they don't understand that there is action versus, action resulting in consequence. They don't think all the time about consequences. They just say, okay, this looks interesting, I'm going to do it. And so they do. Okay. Person with autism may suddenly act on a sensation or a thought. This is kind of what I was just saying. So you may be sitting in church and all of a sudden the child with autism or the person with autism jumps up and starts jumping up and down in the bench. And nobody else knows what they're jumping up and down about. And they may be giggling, they may be screaming or making noises. But since nobody else is inside their head, they don't realize that a funny picture just popped into their mind. So it looks odd to see somebody just randomly jumping up and down for what looks like no reason. But to the autistic person, if they don't tell you what they're thinking, you don't know. All you know is this person just randomly is jumping up and down in church. And you don't understand why. You may think that they're rude because they're interrupting the sermon or the music or whatever. But their brains don't process that way. Okay. Autistic people can sometimes give very few words. One-word answers or few-word responses. They don't always elaborate. Some of them do. But some of them just don't. They're not verbally inclined to just go on and on. I watched a video, actually, of a lady with a boyfriend that had autism. And I remember her talking in the video about how she met him. And she looked at him and she said, that's pretty much how we met. Charlie met me at the table and he was really polite. He brought me flowers. Didn't you, Charlie? And he's like, yeah. And then, we talked and we just really liked each other. So we decided to have another date. Right, Charlie? So then it went from there and we got kind of romantically involved, and one thing led to another, and Charlie saw his friend walk by and he motioned to him to come over, and we all went out to the movies. And Charlie, do you remember what movie we saw? I mean, they don't go out of their way to get into conversation sometimes. Just very brief, yeah. Uh-huh. You know, it wouldn't be necessarily real fun to interview somebody with that type of reaction in autism, because you wouldn't get a whole lot of understanding of what was going on in the situation, because they just don't elaborate, some people that have it. All right. With an autistic person, their emotions are often very, very difficult to read. I think I'm going to end up concluding there because it is, well, did I start on time? I can't remember. All right. Anyways, somebody with autism, their emotions are difficult to read. Well, theirs aren't. I'm sorry. They have trouble reading emotions in others. I said that backwards. Sorry about that. They're not spontaneous with emotions, such as hugging someone who's crying, comforting someone that is sad. But once they're told, you know, Johnny's sad, why don't you go and tell him you feel bad that his hamster died or whatever, then they'll do it. Then they act like the most concerned, caring individuals you have ever met. But somebody that has autism does not automatically say, oh, Johnny's crying over there, I probably should go over and hug them and comfort them and tell them I'm sad that his hamster died. They don't automatically just assume that. So that's something they need to be made aware of. To see exactly how much farther I want to go on this, because I want to try to keep it brief. We'll just leave it at this. Autistic people can become very exhausted very quickly. Imagine if your brain never stopped thinking thoughts. Well, that is how it is for somebody with autism. Their brain goes on, thinking things, processing things, figuring things. It never ends. So they're very, very, very tired very quickly. They wear themselves out thinking, basically. All right. So I'm going to stop there. There's so much more to talk about with autism, and there's so much more I want to get into, but I said to my moderator here, my cousin, I'm keeping it brief because I want people to actually be able to process what I'm saying and not tune me out. All right. So we're going to stop there. Anyways, I'm going to open up the floor now to questions and answers. I'm also going to read the comments that I missed while I was talking, and we'll continue next week on more discussion of what autism is all about. So let's see what I can read. Unfortunately, once the comments go by, I can't read them anymore. So I'm just going to read these, the ones I can see. They seem stuck on subjects, and it's hard to get them off the certain thing they're thinking about. True. Very one-track minded. They get something in their head, and that is pretty much what they go on. Shawnee says, depends on the level. True. They're also blunt and lack filter. Yep. But yes, that's true. Some people with autism, you would never know they were autistic unless somebody told you or unless they told you that they have it. My friend, I can mention his name. He has no problem with it. He writes books and talks to people about it all the time. His name's Forrest. He told me himself that he had Asperger's. Now, I guess in the DSM, is it 5 or 6? I'm not sure. They are now classifying Asperger's on the autism spectrum. So they're just kind of looping it all together now. There is no autism, and then the higher version of that is Asperger's. It's all autism spectrum. All right, Susan says her boyfriend comes off very cold, has trouble showing how he feels. He's a very nice, caring, generous person. Okay. And, you know, if you're in a relationship with somebody with the disorder, you understand them better than somebody that's not in a relationship with somebody. You can explain it better, and there's just a certain type of rapport that you have with somebody that has that problem, because you've been with them, and you're committed to them, and, you know what's going on. All right, so are there any questions, comments, or anything like that? I've enjoyed your comments, Susan. Are you still here? I don't know. I need to hear from my moderator if she thinks that I should continue talking on this subject, or should I just end things here and keep it a very brief live broadcast. Go ahead and type into me so I know. Awesome. Okay, Susan, thank you. Shawnee, what do you think? Should I go on teaching about it or sharing about it? Or should I just end things since there's no more questions or comments? Waiting. Because there is quite a bit more that I can share. I have quite a few notes on this. I really did a big study on it to prepare for this time. And talking to my friend was very enlightening as well, to know what it was all about. Alright, Shawnee is not responding. So, it is 10:26. I will go on with a few more points and then I will conclude. Alright, so, people with autism have a hard time getting jobs. And if they do get jobs, it's hard for them to keep them because their bosses, their coworkers don't always understand what's going on with them. They're not very, some of them are not very social when they're working. They're committed to what they're doing because they can only focus on that very factual thing right in front of them. So people may kind of read them as cold or aloof or rude even. And they don't mean to be rude. They just are really trying to do their best at what they're doing. And of course there's certain jobs that work better with somebody with autism. Maybe somebody can volunteer that information. What jobs are best for somebody with autism? From what I have found, the people that I've talked to that have autism tend to stick with like factory jobs, like assembly work, where there isn't a whole lot of human interaction. And again, I'm talking about extremes of autism. So not every person that has a little bit of autistic problems or issues, you know, focuses only on factory work. They do other jobs. It just depends on the person. One thing about people with autism is they have trouble reading tone of voice. So if you're using an angry voice with them, they don't always recognize that as anger. Or if you're using like a more pleasant tone of voice, they may not perceive that as, oh, you're happy or you're calm or whatever. They just, you can imagine raising children who don't understand tone of voice, how difficult that would be. Because very much so, raising children often involves non-verbals. And it also involves voice intonation. You know, Johnny, I told you not to run in the street. And Johnny that may have autism, or who may have autism, may run in the street thinking that you told him to do that because it sounds like your voice is going up. They don't perceive that as a warning. They perceive that as, you know, let's go play in the street. So it's just the confusion of voice tone. Facial expressions are also very hard for them to read. They can't tell based on, you know, are you surprised? Are you angry? Are you happy? I don't know. And based on how you perceive what somebody's face looks like depends on how you react to that person. So you can imagine being somebody with this disorder, trying to figure out what's going on with people around them, not reacting in the right way, thinking, oh, well, we're all having a good time, when really we're not all having a good time. We're all kind of upset over something. The autistic person does not get that. Eye contact is definitely something I want to mention. I'm going to mention only a couple more after this, and then I will ask for questions and comments again, and then we will conclude. Alright, eye contact. Autistic people either have trouble with eye contact or they stare at you. And unfortunately, it can make people feel like they're being watched or stalked or followed, because again, eye contact is something that can be very confusing for somebody with autism. They don't understand that proper eye contact, I guess in society, proper etiquette is to look at somebody and then look away. Like look for a couple seconds and then look away. But somebody with autism, they may be so intent on what you're saying, what you're doing, what their brain's telling them, that they just stare and stare and stare. And you can imagine that gets very uneasy for somebody after a while. It makes them feel uncomfortable. Sometimes people will misread them because of that eye contact. They might think, oh, this person's attracted to me. Or on the flip side, the person with autism might think somebody is coming onto them or attracted to them or angry at them when they're not, because they don't understand the facial expressions, they don't understand the eye contact, and they're not sure of their own eye contact if they're doing it right or not, you know, doing it neurotypically or not. So it's confusing to them. They often can monopolize conversation and butt in and kind of interrupt. And they will, when they do that, they do all the talking. They take over the whole entire conversation. And it gets very frustrating for people. They get upset with the person with autism and they think they're being, you know, just interrupting and being rude and trying to take over things and trying to make it all about themselves. And they just really want to be a part of things. It's not that they're trying to be rude or mean or nasty or, you know, butting in where they don't belong. They have no idea this is your conversation. I wasn't in it to begin with. I shouldn't just, you know, butt my way into it. They do. That's what they do. It's how their brains are. All right. I'm going to conclude there on my little facts of autism. And I would definitely like to have any questions or comments if there are any. I'm going to read what Susan wrote. My boyfriend has worked in all kinds of jobs, from department stores to making music and helping a DJ in New York City clubs. And now he's into working with a company that makes security cameras and designing computer parts for the cameras. Okay, awesome. So your boyfriend is obviously extremely intelligent, which many people, especially the ones that are dealing with Asperger's, are very highly intelligent people. But then there are some people with autism that are not super highly intelligent. And we're going to talk more about like the tendency towards like obsessive compulsive behaviors and stuff like that next week. So Susan, Shawnee, anybody that's here, do you have any questions or comments? Please post them in. I will wait about a minute here and we will take those if you have any. Thanks for your comments, Susan. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Like I said, there's so much more I can share. There's no one size fits all. I said that already. But there's a lot of information you can learn to help you interact with people that have autism. The biggest thing is, I think, is don't take their behavior personally. Take it at face value for what it is. Oh, thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. I loved having you here for the talk and putting your comments in. I have a fly chasing me at the moment. I have, like I said, a friend at work who definitely has the higher level of autism. He is very fascinated with Big Bang Theory and all things scientific. That is his bent. Very intelligent young man, definitely. But when we have customers, I work in a grocery store and he is my grocery bagger. When we have customers, I notice how he interacts with them. He's not really sure what they want of him. And he tries to be polite because he was taught to be polite. But you can see sometimes that his brain is telling him that this person is not a very nice person. Unfortunately, we're in a grocery store and you've got to be nice to everybody, every customer, you know. But I can tell because I know, I read his signals. I can see just something about him. He's unsettled. This person kind of rubbed him the wrong way. He would never say that because some are blunt, yes, but because he knows in that setting that we're not supposed to just be tactless and blurt out what we want to say, he won't do it. Now, me on the other hand, I have to be careful that I don't mumble something that a customer overhears, because I can get very frustrated and sometimes I don't always keep it in my head, and that's to my detriment at times. So I try to be careful about that. But yeah, my friend that has Asperger's, you can just see it in his body language, and you can hear it in the way he kind of stutters when he responds to the customer, that he's not comfortable. But you wouldn't know it otherwise without knowing how he is and watching those interactions daily. So that's what helps me with him. Anyway, I'm going to conclude there. Thanks everybody that was here for being here, and everybody that will watch this video later. I know that people are just used to Delusion Dispeller videos on YouTube. So that could be why I don't really have a whole lot of people coming to the live show, or it could be the time of it, or whatever. But I'm just going to keep making the live shows as often as I come up with information to share, because people that do come enjoy them. And then that way you have an opportunity to talk to me, in person instead of having to write to me. Just gives you that opportunity, and it's good practice for me. But I really appreciate every one of you, my viewers, and people that visit the live shows, and everybody on Facebook and YouTube and out there in Cyberland. If you have any questions or comments or things to share, definitely bring them my way. Sorry about the fly. Somehow this random fly got in my house and is acting crazy. Anyhow, I'm going to conclude there. Hope everybody is doing well. Please write me at delusiondispeller@gmail.com if you do have questions, comments, things to add, things I could talk about on my next week's live show, which will be Saturday, most likely the same time, on Facebook Live, on my regular Facebook page, and on my Delusion Dispeller page, if I can swing it. Hopefully this all worked well. And thank you, Shawnee, for moderating for me and putting your comments in there. And we will see you next week. Have a wonderful week and weekend, everybody. God bless you. See you soon. Bye for now.